Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. U.S. President Donald Trump's eldest son, Trump Jr., has tested positive for COVID-19. Meanwhile, Brazil's infections have crossed 6 million with over 168,000 deaths. Pakistan has registered over 2,800 new cases and 42 deaths overnight, taking the death toll to over 7,600. Globally, COVID-19 has claimed 1.37 million lives and infected over 57.4 million. Iran says EU3 states should return to fulfilling their obligations under the 2015 deal and stop blaming Tehran. In a statement, Foreign Minister spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh criticized the United Kingdom, France, and Germany for issuing irresponsible statements. Meanwhile, the next potential U.S. Secretary of State, Senator Chris Coons, said he will support the returning to the deal if Iran limits its missile programs and discontinues supports for regional proxies. Russia has vetoed a United Nations Security Council committee's proposal of blacklisting a Libyan militia group for human rights abuses. Russian diplomats say their support is conditioned with evidence of killing of civilian populations. The proposal was tabled by the United States and Germany, which asked to impose an asset freeze and travel ban on the Al-Qayanat militia. Ethiopia says its forces fighting Tigray's People Liberation Front have seized the key towns of Aksum and Adwa in the region. In a statement, the country's emergency task force says the troops are now advancing towards Adrigat city. It says many fighters of the Tigray junta have also surrendered. And in tennis, Daniil Medvedev cruises into the last four of the ATP finals. The 24-year-old Russian beats Diego Schwartzman 6-3, 6-3 in straight sets at the O2 Arena in London. The world number 4 is set to meet Spaniard Rafael Nadal in the semifinals today. For news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. United States President Donald Trump's eldest son, Trump Jr., has tested positive for COVID-19. Meanwhile, Brazil's infections have crossed 6 million with over 168,000 deaths. Globally, COVID-19 has claimed 1.37 million lives and infected over 57.4 million. More in this report.
Coronavirus continues to thrash the Northern Hemisphere, particularly the Americas. The virus statistics in Latin American region continue to present disappointing realities. Mexico has set up rapid COVID-19 test booths at its metro stations as it registered 100,000 deaths within days of hitting 1 million infections. In North America, Canadian Prime Minister has warned of a massive spike in COVID-19 cases which could overwhelm the hospital system. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has accused pharmaceutical giants of delaying their announcements about coronavirus vaccine to punish his support for reducing medicine costs and hurt his re-election efforts.
Pfizer and others even decided to not assess the results of their vaccine. In other words, not come out with a vaccine until just after the election. That's because of what I did with favored nations and these other elements, instead of their original plan to assess the data in October. So they were going to come out in October, but they decided to delay it.
In Europe, Portugal has announced a 15-day extension of a state of emergency after the parliament's approval. German army is currently assisting 23 hospitals across the country in an effort to relieve medical staff in the fight against the coronavirus. Swiss doctors have urged vulnerable COVID-19 patients to record their death wishes in advance to help ease pressures on the ICUs.
continuera à rester critique.
What will remain critical in the next weeks are the intensive care and unfortunately a number of deaths because some COVID-19 patients' condition gets worse despite all the care we can provide to them. So we will still have a very, very difficult situation regarding the health system in the coming weeks.
Over in Asia, India's death toll is rising again with 564 new deaths as country's tally reaches over 132,000, while South Korea's medical groups have called for stricter social distancing curbs as coronavirus continues to batter the country.
In Pakistan, 42 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 7,603. The health ministry says 2,843 people have tested positive overnight. It said there are more than 34,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. The ministry said out of over 371,000 countrywide cases, more than 328,000 have recovered so far. It said over 161,000 cases have been detected in the province of Sindh, while the Punjab has reported over 113,000 cases. In the capital, Islamabad, over 26,000 cases have been infected. Iran says EU3 states should return to fulfilling their obligations under the 2015 deal and stop blaming Tehran. Foreign Ministry spokesperson has criticized the United Kingdom, France, and Germany for issuing what he called irresponsible statements. Saeed Khatibzadeh said Tehran halted its nuclear activities after the deal. In a statement, it said Iran only scaled back commitments after the United States reinstated sanctions. He added Tehran is ready to start fulfilling its JCPOA commitments after other parties to the deal also abide by their pledges. Meanwhile, the next potential U.S. Secretary of State, Senator Chris Coons, said he will support returning to the deal if Iran limits its missile programs and discontinues support for regional proxies. Russia has vetoed a United Nations Security Council committee's proposal of blacklisting a Libyan militia group for human rights abuses. Russian diplomats say their support is conditioned with evidence of killing of civilians' populations. The proposal was tabled by the United States and Germany, which asked to impose an asset freeze and travel ban on the Al-Qayanit militia. The ban also included the group leader Mohammed Al-Khani. The proposal claimed that the United Nations mission in Libya has reported hundreds of human rights abuses perpetrated by the Al-Qayanit militia. Earlier, Libyan authorities found 12 dead bodies from 4 unmarked graves in the Libyan town of Tharhouna. The United States President Donald Trump's options to overturn elections defeat narrow as Michigan lawmakers pledge to follow normal process. After a White House meeting, Michigan's Republican leaders said they will not challenge Biden's win in the state. In a joint statement, Mike Shirkey and Lee Chatfield said Michigan's certification process should be free from threats and intimidation. Trump's campaign has been seeking to challenge Biden's win in Michigan along with several other states. Earlier, Georgia's certification of Biden's win come as a blow to the United States president. Meanwhile, President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris have met with Democratic congressional leaders. Meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer comes as the Democrats are pushing for another multi-trillion-dollar coronavirus relief package. Joe Biden is set to take office on the 20th of January as the 46th United States president. The Group of 20 is set to debate on global recession due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In a draft communique, the G20 leaders say bringing the pandemic under control is the key to supporting a global economic recovery.
The leaders add the recovery remains uneven, highly uncertain, and subject to elevated downside risks. They note some countries may need debt relief beyond a temporary suspension on payments that will end in June 2021. Officials say high on the agenda are purchases and global distribution of vaccines, drugs, and tests for low-income countries. The European Union will urge the G20 to invest $4.5 billion to help poor countries. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he will urge the leaders to take more ambitious action to defeat the pandemic. In remarks ahead of the summit, Johnson said he will also appeal to leaders to address climate change. Saudi Arabia is hosting the 2-day virtual summit of leaders.
It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Ethiopia says its forces fighting Tigray People's Liberation Front have seized the key towns of Aksum and Adawa in the region. In a statement, the country's emergency task force says troops are now advancing towards Adrigat city. The statement read many fighters of the Tigray People's Liberation Front have also surrendered. It said the federal troops also got sieged in the Salilaha region as they try to advance towards Aksum. The United Nations agencies are planning for the possible arrival of 200,000 refugees in Sudan over a 6-month period. A United Nations official said that they have been mobilizing supplies to move the people away from crowded transit points on the border to camps. Meanwhile, aid agencies are calling for an immediate temporary ceasefire in the region to allow relief items to reach civilians. However, Ethiopia has so far rejected calls for talks over the crisis, seeing its operation as internal law enforcement. United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is set to meet with negotiators from the Taliban and the Afghan government in Qatar. The State Department says Pompeo will separately meet both of the teams in Doha. Pentagon has announced to pull around 2,000 troops from Afghanistan. Earlier, Afghanistan's top peace official Abdullah met Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan in Istanbul. Abdullah's visit focused on gathering Ankara's support for talks with the Taliban, along with discussing bilateral ties. In the United States, at least 8 people have been wounded in a shooting at Mayfield Mall in Wisconsin. Wauwatosa Country Mayor Denise McBride says the perpetrator remains at large. In a statement, McBride said 75 police officers are on the scene. The mayor added none of the injuries appeared life-threatening. Police Chief Barry Weber says 7 adults and 1 teenager were transported to the hospital. The police described the shooter as a white male in his 20s or 30s. More than 1,000 protesters have ravaged a supermarket in Brazil's city of São Paulo. The incident followed the death of a black man at the hands of security guards at a store in the city of Porto Alegre. The demonstrators stormed the store, spilling products onto the aisles before dispersing. Protests were also carried out at the store's branches in Porto Alegre and Rio de Janeiro. In a statement, the company said it deeply regretted the brutal death. It said the store immediately took steps to ensure those responsible were held accountable for the crime. Government data shows black Brazilians are the most 3 times killed to be likely the victims of homicide. The United Kingdom has expressed concerns over the Rohingya crisis and the conflict in Rakhine with Myanmar. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson discussed the issue in a phone call with Myanmar's State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi. Myanmar is under pressure to address the reparation of Rohingya refugees after Suu Kyi assumed power for a 2nd term. Her reputation has taken a dive in response to her failure to defend the rights of the country's Muslim Rohingya minority. Rights groups have called for the reparation of Rohingya refugees to their birthplace, where all citizenship rights restored. But the Rohingya Muslims fear they will once again be persecuted at the hands of the Burmese authorities. Young Palestinian girls are coming forward and competing in boxing tournaments in the country. They're breaking taboos as the sport is mostly popular with men. More about the contest in this report.
Trading jabs and punches, young Palestinian girls competed in a female boxing tournament in the Gaza Strip. The contest featured female boxers as young as 7 years old and was attended by dozens of spectators. Participating girls say there is tension during the tournament because of the audience and the noise, but they are excited.
This is the first boxing tournament I participate in. This is my first experience. I feel stressed, especially with many people around, and I'm excited at the same time.
The number of female boxers in Gaza has doubled in the past 6 months since an initial 18-member all-girl team was formed. It now has 45 athletes. Deputy Chairman of the Palestinian Boxing Federation, Ali Abdul Shafi, says some of the girls will be selected to join the Palestinians boxing team. He says the selected girls will take part in a competition in Kuwait in February.
From this tournament, we will choose players for the national team to participate soon in a championship in Kuwait, which is expected to take place in upcoming February in God's will.
One boxer, Hala Ayub, says she hopes the contest will show people that boxing is not only a man's sport.
The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation has pledged to work towards free, open, and non-discriminatory trade and investment. Virtually hosted by Malaysia, leaders of the 21-nation forum say they encourage inclusive recovery from COVID-19. More on this report.
In their first joint statement since 2017, the APEC members say they will foster an enabling environment for the development of the digital economy. They also acknowledge the importance of cooperation in facilitating the flow of data and strengthening trust in digital transactions. The leaders agreed to promote economic policies that support global efforts to tackle climate change and strengthen emergency preparedness. The host of the summit, Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin, said the pandemic has eclipsed the impact of the trade war.
Refrain from backtracking and resorting to protectionist measures to keep markets open and, of course, borders open as well. And this includes ensuring a smooth cross-border movement of essential goods, including food, medicine, medical supplies, and other necessities during the pandemic to ensure unobstructed supply chain within the region.
President Donald Trump reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to promote peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. The White House statement said Trump endorsed the APEC Putrajaya Vision 2040. Earlier in his remarks, Chinese President Xi Jinping called for the support of multilateralism. He said China will actively consider signing up for the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
British Finance Minister Rishi Sunak will announce tens of billions of pounds of infrastructure investment next week. The announcement will target the government's promise to address imbalances between different regions. In a statement, Sunak said the government is committed to level up opportunities so every citizen of the country can benefit from it. He said the package will be a massive down payment on a number of flagship infrastructure programs. The announcement will include new infrastructure strategy and trade priorities. The United Kingdom's economy has shrunk by 20% between April and June, with an 11% fall in GDP, last seen in 1709. The International Air Transport Association says global airlines need another $80 billion to survive from COVID-19 crisis. In a statement, the IATA head Alexander de Junuk said that there is a risk of bankruptcies as if the crisis lasts longer. He said nearly 40 airlines are in a very difficult situation. De Junuk said the airlines will suffer $100 billion in losses, an increase from previous estimates of $87 billion. The global aviation body expects air traffic to be down by 66% for the current year as the whole. It believes the air traffic will not return to last year's level before 2024. During the first wave of the crisis, travel restrictions forced many airlines to ground almost their entire fleets. And now sports. In tennis, Daniil Medvedev cruises to the last four of the ATP finals. The 24-year-old Russian beats Diego Schwartzman 6-3, 6-3 in straight sets at the O2 Arena in London. Medvedev's continuously attacked throughout the match left Schwartzman struggling for answers. Having lost all three matches in last year's tournament, the Russian has remained unbeaten this year so far. The world number 4 is set to meet Spaniard Rafael Nadal in the semifinals today.
First it was Roger winning everything, then Rafa came there and started to make his marks, and then it was Novak. So it's a great pleasure to play against all of them, and really looking forward for tomorrow.
Earlier, world number 1 Novak Djokovic toppled Germany's Alexander Zverev in straight sets to reach the last four. Pakistan's cricket captain Babar Azam says the team is fully prepared to face New Zealand on its upcoming tour. In a press conference, the skipper said the players are in the right frame of mind to perform their very best of their potential. The batsman said the team is aware of the challenge proposed by New Zealand, but it is not under pressure. Azam rejected reports of grouping among the players, saying that the team is a single unit. He said all players cannot perform in every single match and non-performers must be backed. Pakistan will leave for New Zealand on the 23rd of November and will complete a 14-day quarantine period in Lincoln. Their three-match T20 series involving the two teams will start on the 18th of December. South Africa have cancelled today's planned intra-squad practice match after a second member of their squad tested positive for COVID-19. They're due to begin their limited overs series against England in Cape Town on Friday, 27th of November. In a statement, the Cricket South Africa said the unnamed player is in isolation away from the team. Earlier, 3 South African players were put into isolation following the previous positive COVID-19 test on Wednesday. England will play 3 T20s and 3 one-day internationals, all behind closed doors. Monaco came from 2 goals down to beat League One champions Paris Saint-Germain 3-2 in a home fixture. PSG's Kylian Mbappe scored 2 first-half goals on his return from injury. Monaco came out transformed after the break as Kevin Volland scored twice past Claire Neves in 14 minutes. Cesc Fabregas sealed 3 points for Monaco after Abdou Diallo gave away a penalty and saw red 6 minutes before the final whistle. Monaco are now second in the standings with 20 points from 11 games. Despite defeat, PSG still lead the League One table, securing 24 points from 11 fixtures. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.